Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2025 Municipal Election Candidate Forum hosted by BikeWalk Provo. BikeWalk Provo is an all-volunteer, grassroots nonprofit organization that advocates for street design that makes it safe, convenient, and enjoyable for people to move around by bike or on foot. You can learn more about the organization at bikewalkprovo.org. We love Provo, we love our neighbors, and we're so happy that you made it out here tonight. Thank you. My name is Nick Merrill. I serve as BikeWalk Provo's Director of Volunteer Happiness. I live here in Provo, and I'll be moderating this evening's forum. I'm joined tonight by candidates running for Provo City Council and Mayor. We're grateful for their willingness to participate and share their perspectives. This forum will be held in two parts. Part one will be a question session moderated by myself. And each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each question. At the 30-second mark, 30 seconds remaining, we'll throw up a yellow card. So each candidate is aware of the time. And when time is up, we'll let you know. We don't have a red card, so we'll figure that out as we go. Maybe Bryce will just throw up a hand. But we will be enforcing the time limit strictly to allow equal opportunity for candidates to express their views and values. Questions have been assigned randomly ahead of time to ensure fairness. Candidates were not given their questions in advance. We will conclude this section of the forum at 6:50 p.m., at which time we'll have a 10-minute intermission. At 7 p.m. sharp, we'll be back in this room and ready to start audience Q&A. And we'll go for 20 minutes or until we run out of questions, whichever is sooner. And one final note for the audience here. Tonight's event is being recorded and will be posted online for those unable to attend in person. To ensure a high-quality recording, we kindly ask that you remain quiet, respectful, and supportive throughout the evening. And one final reminder for our candidates, please eat the microphone so that we can hear you. And I will instruct you to raise or even lower your voice as appropriate. With that, we're going to go down the line and ask questions. Again, randomized. Get my papers in order here. And we'll be passing around a corded microphone, so please hold the laughs as we figure that out. Thank you. So we'll start. We'll start here on this end. Marcia, if someone asked you to describe what makes Provo unique, what role would transportation and public spaces play in your answer?
So I love the question about what makes Provo unique. I think that the way that we have the mountains and the canyons and all of that beautiful natural area up here, we have a river running right through the center of our town, going down to my area, which is in West Provo, and the lake and the beautiful sunsets and the mountains across the lake there. And the river trail has been a fantastic addition to our city. And is great for transportation. I use it myself. And was there one other question? Makes it unique. And
What role would transportation and public spaces play in your answer?
And so those public spaces are important, but it's also extremely important to have public spaces and good transportation within the city. We have that trail. We have some other trails we have been working on, thanks to BikeWalk Provo. The city has been working on getting more accessibility for bikes and walkers throughout the city. That there is so much opportunity still that we can use. We need better east-west access, better north-south access. We need to connect our trail system and all of the amazing spaces that we have. So I think I'm about done there. And I had a crown put on a couple hours ago, and my whole face is numb, so I'm sorry about that.
Do you need it back?
Yes. We're not passing it down.
Thank you.
Okay, already.
Maybe I'll stand up and walk behind you to grab it back, just to Yeah, but I won't be like creeping either. We'll figure it out. Okay, our next question for Adam Shin. What does a livable neighborhood mean to you? And how should the city of Provo work towards that aspect of livability?
Thanks. Yeah, that's a great question. I think that a livable neighborhood, sorry, am I talking that good?
That's great.
To me, I think a livable neighborhood is a place that can support many different kinds of daily activities and the things that we need to be able to do in our lives, right? When I think of a livable neighborhood, I think of a place that's safe for people of all ages, for kids who might be trying to get to school, for people who need to, parents who are commuting to work. I think of a place that's pleasant, where a neighborhood that you actually would want to spend time, where you want to be outside and enjoy that public realm of being in a place, And the question is, how do we get there, right?
How should the city work towards that?
Yeah, how should we work towards that? I think there's a lot that comes down to traffic safety. A lot of neighborhoods in Provo, as I've knocked doors and talked to people, a top concern across all the city is speeding and traffic, and how do we make our streets safe so when kids are outside and people need to get where they're going, they don't feel like they're at risk, And I think that there's a lot we can do in the city that doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be, we can really try things out that could help and go a long way towards that. We have, there's a lot of cities across the country right now that have found a lot of success with lower cost ways to calm down traffic in neighborhoods, to help make intersections safer, make crosswalks safer. And a lot of times, we've seen some good successes in the city with doing that in some very expensive ways. And I'd love to see us lean into less expensive, more incremental, more, ways, things we can try out. We can learn along the way what works and what doesn't work and what we need to, how to make things better. So I'd love to see us leaning into smaller projects and embracing some of those new ideas.
Thank you, Adam. Our next question is for Sam Blackburn. How should Provo respond when residents say they don't feel safe letting their kids walk or bike to school?
Sorry, am I good? Okay. Yeah, so definitely I think a super valid concern. And one that I might add, definitely impacts, adults as well. I think every one of us would like to be able to, commute safely in our neighborhood, be able to go outside and interact with our neighbors without fear there. And so I think the solution here really involves sort of opening up a number of options for improving commuter safety. I think Adam was absolutely correct to point to speeding and sort of speed limits, but I also think that there are real kind of infrastructure changes that are more broadly pedestrian and biker friendly, and help to promote a community where kids and adults can feel safe walking or biking to school.
Thank you. Our next question is for Rachel Whipple. Imagine Provo in 10 years. What do you hope a visitor without a car would notice about getting around the city?
So I think about how much change we've gotten in the last 10 years, and I want to double that. So 10 years ago, we didn't have connected bike routes where we could get from my house to my office, which is 3 miles away. We do now. I'd like to see a much more robust bike network throughout the city, and I'd like to see more protected bike lanes where we actually have physical barriers, like on Cougar Boulevard, to protect them. We've got some pretty good infrastructure that we've partnered with on UDOT for State Street, 500 West, 300 South, where there's wide combination bike trail that families are comfortable on. But for the bike lanes in the street, they're just paint. We don't even have matchstick bollards in there. So we need to have more of those physical barriers that help. Much more robust east-west connectors because we've got several north-south ones, 300 west, 200 east, 800 east. We need more of that. I'd also like to see these move through some of the other neighborhoods because the Lakeview Parkway, which has a fantastic trail along it, the Provo River Trail are great, and have more wayfinding signs so that people using those trails know how they can connect into the city or get to those things, so that it's not just riding on those trails for recreation, but this becomes a real transportation corridor so that people who are new to the city can get around with the help of those signs. Somebody who lives here can figure that out, but visitors need the wayfinding signs.
Thank you. Our next question is for Jeff Whitlock. Provo streets must serve people driving, walking, biking, and using transit. How do you think the city should balance these different needs when space and funding are limited?
The mic walk gives you a chance to think about the question. I like it. So it's a great question. I served on the Orem Transportation Advisory Commission, and one of the things that was an interesting thing to see there is that a lot of the decision-making process is driven by engineering. Closer to the mic, need the mic. Driven by engineering. And I think that is great. They're the experts when it comes to safety and lots of things, but they also have a lot of biases that they get when it comes to the education they had and the professional organizations they're part of. And so when I think about that question, I would like to find more ways for citizen input and real citizen input into the types of projects that are prioritized and citizen input in the specific areas that are going to be affected. I can think of a number of areas in the city, for example, the drive up to Wasatch Elementary, Walsatch as District 2 people like to call it. That's a common route to school that needs a lot of the local people really would like some safer street implementations there, some traffic calming measures, and they don't feel like there's a process by which that input can lead to actual outcomes.
Great, thank you. Our next question is for Hannah Peterson. How should Provo make sure that safe streets and good transit options reach every neighborhood, not just the busiest areas?
This is a good question. We have a district program. We have where people can come and participate. I would love it if we communicated more with the district boards. That we brought projects like the Safe School Project. We might have a few people at the city level who are discussing that, and I think that the BikeWalk community discusses that all the time. But the reality is that most residents are not aware of it and they don't participate in it, and this is not on their radar. But why not include those districts and let them contribute? Let them give their input. When we're talking about a safe path to school, make sure that the district knows where it is. Make sure that they get to contribute. One of the things I've always loved about when I go to different cities is if there are published bike rides, someplace I could take my children. Maybe the end is at ice cream shop, or maybe it's at a river. Why not ask the different boards if they could come up with their own neighborhood bike ride that is simple and safe and maybe leads to one of their favorite destinations? Just incorporate those people who might love biking and love walking, but are not really as passionate about it as the BikeWalk community, and use that as much as possible in the district program.
Thank you. I'm getting my steps in here when we get down to Hannah. Great, so we're coming back now to Marcia. What personal values or experiences shape how you think about walkability in Provo, whether that's safety for families, freedom of movement, or something else?
Thank you for that question. I think for all of us, our personal experiences really do shape how we think about transportation. And for a lot of us, transportation has not been super difficult, right? Like, we have a car, or we're physically able to get to the places that we need to go. When I was in the legislature, I worked a lot with the disability community, and I learned so much about how difficult it is for them to get to where they want to go. And there can be sidewalks that are uneven that I just step over, but they have to try to get a wheelchair over, or try to get their legs that don't work very well to get over, or they're blind and can't get there. And so I started to see the world differently. And actually this week is, I think it's called Walk to Work Week or Ride to Work Week, but you can sign up. It's a national thing, and you try to arrange your schedule where you don't use a car to get somewhere. And it's to help you think about, and I signed up to do it, and I haven't done it. I've been very unsuccessful, but they said, even if you think about it, you're successful. I've been up to Salt Lake, I've done things that would be extremely difficult if I had to rely on other people or on public transportation or a bike or my feet to get there. And it really has opened up my eyes to how important it is to find safe ways for everyone in our community to be able to participate in the community and to participate in the things that they want to participate in. So, there you go.
Thank you. Our next question is for Adam Shin. As Provo grows, what's one guiding principle you would apply to new development so it serves today's residents and future generations?
That is a great question. I was thinking about that before the meeting, actually, that specific question. Are we... Well, wait a second. No collusion. I was just, great minds think alike, right? So I want to tell you a little bit about where I grew up. I lived in West Jordan, Utah growing up, before I came here for school as a student, and before my wife and I met here and stayed to put down roots. Growing up in West Jordan, we lived on the very west side of West Jordan, on the periphery, right? Our neighborhood was one of the new, it was a new neighborhood that was built on the edge of town. It was like one highway running out that just served this little cluster neighborhood, and it was nice because you lived way on the edge of everything, and you just had a nice road going in. Nobody was driving through your neighborhood, nobody was causing traffic for you. We just got to drive through everybody else's neighborhood to get into town and then drive back out. But when the neighborhood was new, it was good, right? People really enjoyed living there. And what happened though is over the years, West Jordan has grown. And there's more demand for housing, there's more demand for people wanting to live in that area. And suddenly that neighborhood on the edge of town is no longer the edge of town. The edge of town moved out, right? And there's new neighborhoods going up on the edge of town that is now moved. And suddenly my childhood neighborhood has new roads going through it, it's got new connections, they're widening the roads and putting in lights and accommodating traffic, and everybody there's like, wait, what's going on? This is not what we thought it was going to stay as. But that is due to the way that they've chosen to grow, right? They've chosen to grow that way, and because they've only, living on the edge of town, you only have that one way to get around. Any kind of growth is going to come with that discomfort and that challenge for the traffic. We as a city of Provo have better bones. We have population density living near the places where people need to go. We have students, in the university. I think that any kind of growth needs to understand and lean into the fact that, we need to have more ways of getting around than just driving. And that comes down to, if we say no to any future growth period, we'll see the same thing happen where cities on our periphery start growing and funneling traffic into our city center. So we need to be thinking about alternative ways to get around, especially for new growth that goes beyond just more cars and more traffic driving through the middle of town. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam. Our next question is for Sam Blackburn. Residents often distrust city projects because they feel left out of the process. As a city council member, how would you rebuild public trust in decisions about roads, transit, and development?
I think this is maybe the question in local government, because every one of the members of the city council will tell you, how much outreach they try and do before every project, and how, the feedback they still receive comes, after it's already started, and it's never quite as helpful as they're hoping. And so, I am quite sensitive to those kinds of concerns. like broadly, I do think the biggest thing is you really just gotta sort of nail your community outreach beforehand. And you've got to be able to sort of set expectations as to what Provo like actually needs sort of in the long term in terms of like goal setting and being able to say like, we actually do need these, you know, X and X transit or housing projects, and like the conversation that we're having is about how we implement them, not whether they go in at all. And then from that starting point, it becomes a lot easier to say, like, you know, how do we work out sort of the specifics of this, like what really is sort of the best route for this new bus line or whatever, versus getting bogged down in debates over sort of whether the project should go forward at all.
Thank you. Our next question is for Rachel Whipple. When businesses or developers request features that prioritize cars, like drive-throughs or big parking lots, how should the city balance those requests with the goal of walkable, people-friendly spaces?
So it's pretty unusual that we have anybody asking for a bigger parking lot than what our arbitrary requirements for parking are. The only exception for that I can think of is the temple that's being rebuilt up at Rock Canyon, and they wanted a ton of parking for that. So that's going to be a very overparked building. So in that case, what the answer was is we let them do that so far. As far as requests for drive-throughs and things like that, we're looking at more anti-idling campaigns because drive-throughs end up impacting the air quality for everyone around them. If we're going to allow drive-throughs, and I've seen this for things like Swig or Sodalicious, the real factor that we need to do is make sure that that drive-through is long enough that you do not have vehicles out blocking the street. And for the case of the one on Canyon Boulevard, blocking my bike lane so I can't commute home from work because they are right there. We also saw this when Dutch Brothers opened. There were lots of cars that were in the bike lane, formerly the shoulder. And that died down because as a city we get super, super excited about new things and we're like bananas crazy for it, but then it goes down to a normal rate. And since that has settled down, their 2-lane drive-through has been adequate. But all of these shops should also have an option where you can walk up or ride your bike up. And so for Dutch Brothers, as a cyclist, I discovered that I could skip the entire car lane by just riding up my bike to the service window, and there is a natural incentive right there to ride your bike and skip the lane. So we're looking at anti-idling ordinances to help with the air quality while they're in the lanes, but making sure that those facilities are adequate so that they're not blocking transportation is good. Other than that, I'm out of time. Oh, you're good.
Thank you. Our next question is for Jeff Whitlock. Would you support policies that encourage more housing near transit, even if some neighbors object? Why or why not?
Well, luckily I'd say we have the new ITOD zone, which is intended to encourage housing near transit. And I assume when you mean transit, our rail line, which is great. And so, yeah, I would encourage it. We had, I think that's a great zone. I think it's a place where we have an opportunity to add quality housing and also at different density levels. We had recently, it was when I was on the planning commission, the chair of the planning commission, we had a challenging question like just that come before us, where there was Rugged Grounds Coffee that was going to be replaced with actually HUD housing, which is affordable housing, and so there will be on a case-by-case basis, trade-offs that I think the city council and the planning commission need to adjudicate and figure out what's the right thing in each case, given the plan. But generally speaking, absolutely, that's kind of what we need to do in order to, as Adam was talking about, limit the number of car trips in our city and reduce congestion.
Thank you. Our next question. pass it on the chair there for a second. Our next question is for Hannah Peterson. If Provo were to receive unexpected federal or state funds for transportation, what principles would guide how you decide to spend them?
So this is free money, right? Free money, no taxpayers are doing this. Principles really include the residents as much as possible. Include the residents, communicate as much as possible, even people who are not part of the bike walk community. I say this, my profession, I'm a sustainable environmental designer and have done it for years. I worked in Colorado for 10 years and my job was to design sustainable communities. My biggest project was a 900 home development where I designed bike paths and walking paths. And I got that account because I included every voice. There were voices that were concerned about fiscal responsibility. There were voices that wanted all bike paths. There were people who wanted the roads to be improved. But I included everybody so that there was not that contention. If the principle I would apply is to include everybody and just have it be balanced. And really do everything I can to create a culture in Provo where everybody feels like they can be invested into biking and walkable paths.
Thank you. Our next question is for Marcia Judkins. How would you balance the needs of students who make up a large part of Provo with the needs of long-term residents when it comes to transportation and public spaces?
So sometimes we look at students and long-term residents as completely different things, right? But actually we're all people and we all have the same needs to be able to get to the places where we need to go and have the things that we need. And so the students, for a long time, they've been spreading out into, neighborhoods, and I know that there's been some friction with that. And so we need to look at that issue. Sometimes we look at peripheral issues like parking or how a yard is or different things like that, but we need to look at what is the actual driving reason that this is happening and then solve that problem. I teach math. I always tell my students, you have to know what the problem is before you can ever solve it, right? If you try to solve the wrong problem, you're not going to do it. So I think that's where that friction does come in, is that we haven't looked at that particular issue and said, how do we solve it? How do we bring these students maybe in closer to campus where they want to be? And then we can have these other neighborhoods that maybe don't have the illegal rentals, because it's all preying on students anyway, So that's one part of it. But the other part of it is balancing the transportation piece. Everybody needs transportation, right? And I would love to see more public transportation for students. The BRT, some people hate that. It has an average of 15,000 riders a day. They could be on our roads right now if you would rather. But that has been a really important thing for our community. And down in West Provo, we have UTA on Demand right now. It's a pilot program that when I was a legislator, we got that in, and I would love to see that expanded throughout Provo. It's not just students who have these transportation needs, it's everyone has transportation needs throughout the city. We have elderly people who can't drive anymore that need to be able to get to the grocery store. We have students who maybe don't want to have a car that need to get to the grocery store, can't afford to have a car to get to the grocery store. And we need to see our whole community as a whole community, as all, I think we need more unity in our community. I know it's kind of a line there, but, and see each other as people with needs, and we can address those needs. So.
Our next question is for Adam Shin. The city has to often negotiate with powerful partners like UDOT, UTA, the railroad, and BYU. How will you make sure Provo's priorities are respected?
That's a good question. I think that, our city is unique in a lot of ways, and one of those ways is that we are a city that's grown up around a university. We've grown up around the railroads, we've grown up around these other parts, like you said, that really define so much of how we've grown and what the nature of our city is. I think open communication is key. Ideally, especially with groups like UTA and UDOT that may be wanting to use eminent domain or to build through the city, we need to have open and frequent communication with them so we understand what's on their agenda, and we're communicating that to our residents, and they're aware of what's going on as well. I think there's been some recent cases where I think we could have done better with that, opening up that channel of communication with the public about what other plans were with other entities. BYU is interesting, as Marsha was saying, that we are a college town. We have a huge number of university students here in our city boundaries, and we often don't. We sometimes overlook that. I think you could go to a whole year of city council meetings, and if you weren't paying attention, you might even miss that we are a college town with a huge university in the middle. And BYU often doesn't always know about what's going on with the city too. I've spoken with people who told me that BYU wasn't even aware there was a shortage of merit student housing as we were in a recent conversation. They didn't realize that housing scarcity was an issue for their own students. So I'd love to see better communication around that. I think that we shouldn't have to think of these other entities and groups as ideally there shouldn't be tension. We should be able to work with them and treat them as allies in building our city and solving problems together.
Thank you. Our next question is for Sam Blackburn. How do you think Provo's transportation system affects local businesses, positively or negatively? And what would you do as a council member to support economic vitality?
Yeah, I've heard that Provo's public transit is a huge boon to local business. As Adam and Marsha were just discussing, students make up a really large portion of BYU's total residents, and at the end of the day, lots of students don't have cars, rely a lot on transit to be able to do even routine grocery shopping, let alone get to another part of Provo entirely. And so that means that all of those businesses really do take a pretty substantial a pretty substantial percent of their sort of customer base to students and into the transit that they use. And so, I think at the end of the day, that means that transit is something that the city should absolutely continue to invest in, not only for the good of its citizens, but also for the good of the business community.
Thank you. Our next question is for Rachel Whipple. If a large number of residents oppose a project that city data shows would improve safety, how would you handle that as a council member?
Well, we've got this right now with UDOT redoing the viaduct over University Avenue, going over railroad tracks. There are a lot of people in some of our businesses who are like, are you kidding? This is going to be so hard on our businesses. The impact over 2 years with one-way traffic on this is going to be a nightmare. And the response really has to be one that is patient, because a lot of times people are coming new to this problem. I've been talking with UDOT about this for the last 3.5 years and going through their plan and the project. But a lot of people are new to this, and I need to be able to give them the information and let them know that the concerns that they're bringing forward, we have been thinking about. They are being addressed. Because if they think that their worries are not being listened to or taken into account, they're not going to listen to you when you try to reassure them, right? And they're not going to be in favor of the project. For the one that we've got with the viaduct, that is being done entirely because of safety. The bridge itself is crumbling. I rode my bike over it exactly one time. I will never do that again. I've walked on it a couple of times, not my favorite. I'm really glad that we now have the pedestrian bridge over to the front runner station that makes that so you don't have to do it. I appreciate that this will have impact on businesses and downtown, on the people who live on Freedom Boulevard who will be blocked in their driveways. And we're doing the very best that we can, but this is necessary.
Thank you. Our next question is for Jeff Whitlock. What should the city do to make sure Provo is a good place to age in place, especially for seniors who may not be able to drive in the future?
Well, first I want to say that I think we're all very grateful that Councilor Whipple survived her ordeal with the bridge.
Never again.
No, this is a great question. I think I have two thoughts on how do we help people age in place. One is, I've talked to a lot of older residents who have very large houses, and it becomes a little bit harder for them to maintain it as they get older. Also, sadly, property taxes keep rising, and if they're on a fixed income, it makes it harder for them to meet their obligations with their mortgage and their cost of living. And so I think having various downsizing options is really helpful, and obviously it needs to be in the right places, but I think smaller townhomes, condos, so if older residents want to keep living in Provo without maintaining a very large lawn, those are options. We also had the second thought I have is we also had a recent city planning commission meeting where we were trying to extend assisted living facility off of University Avenue, and there was quite a lot of resident pushback to that because of parking concerns. And so I think making sure that we have active transport options and other transportation alternatives to assisted living facilities so that there isn't so much resident concerns when we expand them is another thing we need to consider doing.
Thank you. Our next question is for Hannah Peterson. How would you ensure Provo's transportation decisions align with goals around air quality, health, and the environment?
Okay, this is a good one, only because, like I said, I am a sustainable professional. That's what I do. Our goals, well, look at what impacts our air quality. Air quality comes from vehicles. It comes from the number of vehicles. What is our goal in regards to the number of vehicles that we're going to have in Provo? I've always said that I want to have all of these different options. I love living in Provo. I don't want to live in Salt Lake. My husband's job is in Salt Lake. We were going to move there, but I don't want to. It's too crowded. I'm worried about the air quality, and there's congestion even in residential areas when you come home. Our goals, I think that everything that we do, we need to consider, are we incentivizing people to bring more cars into Provo? When we make decisions about housing, when we make decisions about parking, I think that we need to have a goal that we're not necessarily incentivizing more vehicles to come in, because that is the biggest impact on our environment. It is our air quality, and it is going to come from cars. So have lots of different options, but when developers come to the table and they want to bring high density and bring more cars in, is there a limit? Has Provo had that conversation? How many cars are we realistically going to have in Provo before it starts affecting our quality of life in a very negative way?
Thank you. That concludes part one of the candidate forum this evening. We'll now break for 10 minutes and then return for questions from our audience here. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, from a wonderful 10-minute break. I feel so refreshed, personally. We will now move to the audience Q&A portion of the 2025 BikeWalk Provo Municipal Election Candidate Forum. That is a lot longer than we actually intended on calling this. 4 questions. If you're uncomfortable vocalizing your question, we have cards on the back table, or if you'd like to take a card and try to write down your thoughts ahead of time, you're more than welcome to. And then you can slip that card to me here at any point. Alternatively, you're welcome to raise your hand and we'll call on you. Please stand, say your name, and in 30 seconds or less, say your question. And then for the benefit of those here and those watching this in the future, I will restate your question as best I can. If I miss a word, please forgive me. Bryce?
We have a handful of people on the Zoom call, so I'm going to be watching the chat.
Great.
If you have questions come in there, I'll let you know.
Okay, we will also be taking questions from friends on Zoom, sending those in. So Bryce is watching for that. We'll start with the audience. Can I get a hand? Right here. Jonathan, since you're so close to the microphone, I'm going to hand Jonathan the mic.
Jonathan Handy, BYU student studying manufacturing engineering, been living in Provo for about 8 years now. So my question is, if you are elected, what will you do to try to improve the intermingling between the BYU students and the rest of Provo? Because I feel like there's quite a divide there where the BYU students kind of just stay around campus and they don't experience all the good that's in Provo, and I think that helps to decrease how Provo works with the BYU student population.
Candidates, I forgot to explain to you how this would work on your end. We would invite you to keep your responses to about 20 to 30 seconds, and we'll just go down the line so we can hear from everyone on the same issues, providing us a little bit of a different flavor compared to part one of the forum. And we'll just run down the same order as before. Maybe actually we'll alternate to give, I don't know.
Give me a break. So I think kind of at the heart of your question is proximity, right? It's harder to hate somebody or be dismissive of people that we have proximity with. And I would love to create more opportunities for us to gather together as a city. I loved the rooftop concert series. I think that was a great opportunity for all of us to get together. I would like to have some maybe open air concerts down at the Everett Sports Park where we could all get together. Just events, more things in downtown Provo where that bring people together. And I think students are a big part of that. I also think that we need to really look at transportation to these events. If everybody's driving to all of these events, it gets pretty darn crowded, so we need to make sure that we have active transportation options and also public transportation options, and that's something I would really work on.
I think we could do a lot for student outreach as a city. I think that the most recent numbers I've seen is that we have over 40% of our population in Provo is students, which sounds really high, but then you realize we have UU, we have other like Provo College, we have lots of schools here, and yet these students very rarely they rarely come to neighborhood meetings. They don't show up to vote very much. I think there's a lot that we could do as a city to reach out and encourage them to start being more civically engaged and make them aware of what they, how much their voice matters and how much really, how much of their experience, even here as a short time, comes down to these questions that they could share their voice on. I'd love to see us do more to reach out on that.
Yeah, likewise, I do think this is a great question. And I also think it's one that maybe comes with like a little bit of nuance because I think in a lot of ways, like actually families have really good reasons for maybe not wanting to like live right next door to students. But students are noisy, they stay up late, they come and go at weird times and frequently, cram many students and cars into small properties. But I do think that there are lots of opportunities for including students in sort of like broader community events in ways that do sort of help to build that sense of community and of camaraderie to some extent. So, I think like a lot of that does center around sort of like commercial life. Like I think downtown Provo is a really cool spot, and I think that there are interesting ways to potentially bring more students and more families, both sort of into those kind of shared spaces. So.
That was a nice handoff. For me, I want to continue trying to encourage all of the students I encounter to come out and do all of the amazing fun things that we have in Provo. Quinn Peterson with Downtown Provo Inc. has started going on the new student orientation and telling the students about transportation, how to get downtown on UVX, and that we've got Velour and the Buzzards and Beats Festival and like Film Quest and all of these things that students would be really into if they knew about. And I'm also continuing to work with students as I meet them and pulling them into work at our neighborhood communal garden and mentoring students who come through asking about being a lawyer or a city council official or things like that, continuing to work with the Office of Civic Engagement. There's a lot, and really every time I run into more students, I'm like, oh, you should come and do this thing. And it's so much fun. They can get caught up in the busyness of their life and their studies, and drawing them out into the community, into the activities, it just makes it more fun for everyone.
I have two thoughts here. One, when I was at BYU, I served on student government, the student advisory committee, and Mayor Curtis actually came multiple times to our committee and gave an update on what was going on in Provo, explained certain issues to us, told us about upcoming events, and then we were able to disseminate, and I thought that was really great. So I think elected officials actually going into student government and kind of the leaders and influencers at BYU is one great way that I've seen in the past work. The second is I think the communication influence can go the other way too, not just making the students aware of what's going on in the city, but making people in the city aware of what's going on at school. For example, I recently was lucky enough to become aware of this program called Take a Cougar to Lunch, which we'll talk about the name later, it's kind of strange. But nonetheless, it's an awesome program where you get to basically take students to lunch and kind of help them with their career path and give them career coaching and guidance, and I've built some wonderful relationships through that experience.
Worked as a neighborhood representative for a long time, and I live in Southeast Provo, so we have a large demographic of single professionals and also students. And one of the things that we have done is that we invite usually the young single professionals and the students through their LDS ward congregations to every service project that we have, and it's because we need them. We do not have, we need the support in that neighborhood. It's a lower economic neighborhood, there's so much need. So every time we have needed people to speak Spanish to come to the school, or we need a bunch of kids to help somebody move, or we need, there's so much need. And I have found that to be very successful because they're always willing to help. And when they come and are pumping water out of somebody's basement, when they're doing that, I feel like there is a much better connection. The students understand what's happening in the community, and the community appreciates them more. So that's one thing, is just I want to have a committee. If I'm elected, make sure there is a regular communication in the invitations.
Thank you. Good, you guys wrapped up in this mic court for this. Appreciate your cooperation. We'll now take one of the questions from our friends on Zoom, just out of deference to them. And to keep things fair, I will be switching up the order here, so we're actually going to start back with you, Hannah, for this next question. Could I get that from you, Bryce?
Sure.
Here's the mic.
This is from Casey Lance. I'm curious to hear the candidates' thoughts about improving public transportation on the west side, particularly near the high school. Would this be feasible, and would UTA be willing?
I do not know if UTA is willing, but I do think that there is opportunity to do it right on West Provo. I have heard communication from different people in that community who have talked about, I guess, trade schools and different things like that next to Provo High, and we would love to have transportation where kids from all over the county can get, utilize that service. So I do think that's a conversation to have with the neighborhood. But it is important that we do West Provo right. I'm not saying that all of Provo is wrong, but like I said, for my profession, if we get in there before everything is built out and make the road connectivity pass walking experience, if we raise the bar just a little bit, we really can create an asset in West Provo. And I would love to have that voice on the city council just to make sure it's done right.
We'll get this right one of these days. I, as someone running for District 2, don't know much about that particular issue, and so I want to give the time to other people who might.
Oh, well, you just took my prep time away from me. So right now we've got the UTA on demand, and part of the point of that program is finding out where the need is, where people are coming from, and where they're going when they're on the west side. And I'm really hoping that enough people are using this service that UTA will be able to justify the warrant putting in additional routes and stops based on that. I would say that even if they do that, I really want to keep that on-demand service because that is like the most amazing, like public provided Uber type thing that there is. It doesn't have, I think, probably better than Uber. Honestly, it's way, way cheaper. The other thing that we've got is that when the airport was built and we did the bus station at the airport, we deliberately built it so that it could accommodate the BRT, the bus rapid transit, in the hopes that in the future, UTA will extend the BRT line out to the airport and do more frequent service to the airport. And so when the city is building things like that, being forward-thinking about the infrastructure that we put in so that we can lure more UTA investment in routes is really, really crucial. Almost.
Yeah, I think Rachel's answer was really good there. I will also mirror Jeff and say, not a part of the city that I'm intimately familiar with, so I'll yield the balance of the time.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the west side is an interesting case. It's growing. We have increasingly a number of amenities out there and destinations like Provo High, like the airport, like the Epic Sports Park, that attract people. And we have a very few number of bottlenecks that people have to actually cross to get to and from the west side of Provo, right? And I think the transit is going to be, as the west side grows, it should definitely be a part of the equation. I think it really needs to be to accommodate the realities of our traffic congestion and how we're going to alleviate that. I love having the airport in our backyard. I think it's great. I love the inexpensive flights and not having to go all the way to Salt Lake to get anywhere. And as the airport is expanding and growing, I think that we're going to need to have some kind of transit component that's more frequent than what we have now. It would make a lot of sense to make it easier to get to the airport and to get to those destinations. I'd love to figure out how we can make a piece of that include things like getting to Provo High School, maybe getting to the Epic Sports Park, getting east-west across downtown Center Street, and maybe even extending east all the way to the foothills over there. I think there's a lot we could do with an east-west transit connection, and I would love to see us work with UTA and signal that we want to see that happen. We're not going to be dragging our feet, and that we actually would like to make that an amenity.
Thank you. So I've worked a lot with UTA and it all getting things funded through UTA and through UDOT now, because that's the parent over it, is about political power. And we do have political power in Utah County, and we actually have political power here in Provo if we step up and use it. So we need to leverage what we have, that we are the county seat of Utah County. We have an airport in our county. We now have this sports park. We have things that we really can leverage with the state to get funding. However, I think UTA also and UDOT also sometimes does the most expensive option. I would love to get the BRT down there, but actually would I? Because I don't know. I like left turns. I don't know. But we could just get a bus route. like a bus route we have a transit station in Orem, we have a transit station in Provo. We could get just a bus route, that's what we need right now. To get to, I look at the huge swath of land that we use for a parking lot at the airport, that's not the best use of that land. And I feel like we need to be looking at other things. And, but I completely agree with what everybody has said here. We need to, not just, I mean, West Provo is extremely important and we need to look at transportation there, but we need to look at it throughout Provo and have a plan in place throughout Provo for our public transportation. I did have one more thing what Adam brought up, I would love to form a partnership with the schools, the city, and UTA, and figure out how we can save money all the way around and have public bus routes to and from, not just Provo High School, but also Timview High School. It will open up opportunities for families, it will open up roads, it will open up funding to go to other things. Anyway, so those are some of my plans.
Great, we'll now take a question from the audience here. I saw your hand first. Could you go ahead and say your question loud and then I'll repeat it in the microphone.
Okay. So my name's Arthur. I'd like to just say that I think the people of Provo are very capable and they're in a very unique position to lead themselves. So that would make you guys extremely capable of being our leaders. So my question is that how can the citizens of Provo be encouraged to share opinions and discussions around the subject of transportation and safety in a world with ever-growing distraction?
It's worth reading it properly here. And that was from Arthur. How can citizens of Provo be encouraged to share their opinions and discussions around the subject of transportation and safety in a world with ever-growing distractions? We're actually going to start here in the middle with Sam Blackburn, and then work out to the edges, and I'll mess with the mic, I'll be watching.
So, I mean, I am a student at BYU, and like, I think a big part of getting the opinions of Provo residents is getting the opinions of BYU students, who, as has often been remarked upon, are not always sort of full participants in local government kind of city planning decisions, but where like students are a huge user of transit and to some extent other city services, and I think that they deserve a voice. And so, in a lot of ways, taking the conversation to them is absolutely necessary. Jeff earlier mentioned talking like directly with sort of student leadership on campus, and I think that there are avenues for working more directly with kind of academic departments to be able to get student input and kind of see how that segment of our residents, use the transit that is provided.
Let's bring it this way, and then we'll go over to Rachel once we reach that.
All right. Yeah, this is a great question. Last year I had the chance to serve on the City Planning Commission here in Provo, and I've attended many city council meetings over the last year and a half. What strikes me the most is I think on those meetings and reflect on them is that the conversation belongs to people who show up. The temperature in the room, the responses that public leaders are going to get, the tone of the tenure of meetings depends on those who show up. And a lot of times, honestly, it's a lot of the same people who show up as regulars. And a lot of folks simply do not show up to express other opinions. I think there's a real thing where people there's maybe an activation energy or just an awareness issue, but I think a lot of people don't have their voices heard because they simply don't exercise their right to show up and speak. And this is, it's a question that I think there really is only so much that elected leaders can do to encourage that. That maybe if I can throw this back at you a little bit, I think that there's a need for the citizens of Provo, the public, to really understand that and talk to their neighbors and talk to their communities and share that. Say, look, you guys, really, if you want to have your voices heard, sometimes the friction to make that happen is just to come to a meeting and raise your hand and step up when it's time for public comment. There's a lot of voices that really need to be heard across Provo, and I think there's a lot to be said for just the power of showing up. that's what's top of mind for me.
Oh, yes, great question.
I agree that showing up is important, but equally important, or maybe probably more important, is feeling heard when you do show up. And I think so often people show up to meetings or have shown up or have called or reached out or emailed and have not had a response back, or it's just been kind of blank back. And that's what I found in my service, is that people are actually genuinely shocked that I have written an email back to them, as a legislator or when I was on the school board. And often that's the nature of the meeting, because people will show up to a public meeting, to a council meeting or a board meeting or whatever, and there can't be that interaction right there. That's part of the rules of the meeting. But so we need to make sure as elected officials, something that I plan on doing is having town hall meetings and going out. I loved what Jeff said about, when Mayor Curtis used to show up to the meetings on campus. That's something that I think an elected official needs to do. I would show up to and talk to just every area of the city and answer my emails, answer phone calls. I want people to feel like what they're saying makes a difference and that I'm going to look into it. And I think that is what's really important.
Thank you. I think the very worst thing that we can do is to be dismissive when people give us their concerns. Say we've already thought about that, or that's not a real concern. That will kill engagement like nothing else. And there are a lot of distractions. So when somebody is concerned about a thing enough that they're going to come and they're going to tell us, they're going to email us, they're going to show up at a meeting, we need to embrace them, and we need to show how their concern puts them in part of a community. So if they are concerned about a crosswalk by their school, then yeah, that's a real worry. And you need to work with your school community council on safe routes to school. You should talk with the people at BikeWalk Provo, because those are going to be your friends in helping you advocate for this. You should get connected with the No Fatalities organization. Point them to other groups who will help them have that sense of community, so that their one concern becomes an entry to an ability to have their voice heard and magnified so that they can be more effective. These are the ways that we show up for each other, that we show that we love each other, that we protect each other. This is how we build our community. And when we are doing this together, we make it better.
First, thank you for the question. I really appreciate it. So I have 3 ideas here. The first one, and perhaps most importantly, is to vote. A lot of these races are going to be decided by a couple hundred votes, maybe less. And as a representative city government, voting for people you think will best represent you and your values and the process you guys run is a huge leverage point for you. Second is when I served on the planning commission, I used to tell my friends, I said, it's really odd. We just had a meeting tonight where the decision maybe affected millions of dollars and there was 2 people there. And you find that a lot serving in city government. And part of that is, there's different reasons, but it's hard for average people, working people, just to show up for hour-long meetings on a Wednesday night, people with kids. And so I think kind of creating other mediums of engagement is really important. Being able to explore, do more spot polls, Facebook comments, like other forms of engagement are really important. And then the last thing I would share is, I think it's really important for elected officials to do the work, to go out beyond the meetings, to have conversations and to learn from a wide variety of constituencies. So for example, I'm the CEO of a startup, we have thousands of customers, and it's very important for me to listen to our customers to make sure we're building what's important for them. So I've found things like office hours. I'll regularly do office hours where customers can book time with me. I plan to do that if I'm elected. Having a Slack community with all of our customers, and the customers welcome to join, and they can just share any feedback they want at any point in time. Sending regular product updates to say, hey, this is what we're planning to build. What do you think about this? Can you give us feedback on our roadmap? these are all things that I've learned in my professional career about ways to do the work to actually engage with a variety of constituents. So that's what I have to do.
Well, I've talked a lot about record. I really do believe that when I vote, I love to look at the record of who's running, because I know that that's probably how they are going to vote in the future. And my record, when you talk about how are we going to listen to the residents, that I think is my strongest record. I've been in the neighborhood program for about 10 years. Every development project, every decision about where a bus stop's going to be, every decision about a bike path, everything that's done, I will call a meeting, even if there's not a meeting, even if there's only a few people at that meeting, I call more. I call everybody, I text everybody, I know everybody because I've been here forever. But that is how I feel. So I cannot stand when the neighbors are not included in the vote, because it always goes poorly, usually, not always, I shouldn't say, but usually, when the leaders, planning commission or council, vote against the residents, I don't think it goes well. And so that is my strongest belief, is we have to have leaders who have a record of respecting the residents and their voice. And I would also say one of the things I would do is, on the planning commission, for example, they make a lot of decisions without a neighborhood meeting. They'll make a lot of decisions when only a few people show up. But I've been here long enough to know that in previous planning commissions, we had representatives that would never cast a vote without contacting everybody. They would shut it down. They would tell staff to go back to the table and redo it until everyone had their voice heard and residents were somewhat on board. And I think that we need to have leaders who will make sure that that takes place and not just accept votes from leadership that have not included the residents.
This will be our final question for the evening. Time flies when you're having fun. And for our candidates, this will start with Rachel, go back out there, and then come to Sam, and come back out to Marsha. Just trying to switch it up, keep it fresh, keep it fair. Let's say you've created enough room in the city budget to hire a new part-time employee. What role or tasks would you give that employee to get the most bang for your buck? Kind of a tricky question, so just chew on it for 10 more seconds.
Is it a full-time or part-time employee?
This is a part-time employee.
Jeez Louise. And I mean, looking at practically, if we've got a new part-time employee, it really just means that we're assigning half of employees' work to somebody that we've already got in the city, right? We're just giving more work to somebody, but we are giving them special assignments. I don't even know, because I know that we need certain employees. Like, we need to have at least 3 more zoning enforcement officers. Like, we need to multiply a Benedict, who's our District 5 enforcement officer. I want 4 more Benedicts.
That's great.
Yeah, I just really don't know. We just assigned Tara Riddle to kind of coordinate ADA accessibility issues, but she already is doing like 4 different jobs. So maybe having somebody take those things on, where we could look at, you know, the sidewalks, the curb cuts, all of these things in a more organized fashion than we have just with our streets crew. We did a sidewalk audit. That was helpful. We realized that we won't have them all fixed for 40 years, but I just can't. I know so many things that we need, and I can't prioritize in 10 seconds. I failed.
And I'm happy to restate this question.
So I have a little bit of a counterintuitive answer to this based on my experience. So I've had the opportunity to hire many people throughout my career, and I've learned that usually when you hire half an employee for part-time work, you get 1/4 of the output. So I actually would not hire someone part-time. I'd wait to find so we get a full-time budget. And I would even go beyond this, because it's just hard because, you know, people, they have to get up to speed and learn, and there's a lot of coordination that happens, and usually you only really get into your productive hours of work on the margins when you are able to kind of clear your plate from all the coordination and get into your work. So I've just found part-time doesn't work super effective. But I would go even farther than this to say that I've also found that when you try to hire individuals on the cheap, you also tend to not get as great of output. So I actually believe in paying premium salaries to get premium quality employees. And I found that, you know, sometimes you can hire someone that's 3 to 4 times productive if you pay them 20% more, 30% more. So these are the kind of practical experience and lessons that I bring to my service if I'm able to be elected, so that we can make wise decisions in how we spend our budget.
But what would they do?
Oh, if I were able, but I'm changing the question. That's the thing. I have ideas for full-time employees, just I wouldn't go with half-time.
Well, this is assuming that this person has already been hired and that you have the budget for it, and this is everybody has consensus. You know, I was a neighborhood rep a long time ago when we had someone from the city come and they were talking to us about active transportation. And I don't know what happened in that neighborhood meeting, but it went south a little bit. And that employee ended up calling a bunch of neighbors NIMBYs in the middle of the meeting. And I remember thinking, boy, did that go south. The taste that was left in people's mouths was they didn't want to really engage. You know, they didn't want to talk about bike paths, and really what we were there was to talk about we were talking about something else. If there was a part-time person, I would have them be highly engaged in marketing and community relations, and work through the district program and be positive and gather resident input and ask what each individual neighborhood needs and create a culture where we all feel, a culture where people feel respected even if they have different opinions maybe about housing, that we can talk about transportation or biking in a healthy way and feel included.
Yeah, so sort of similarly to a couple of the other folks up here, I maybe don't have the perfect answer here, but I will say, like my priority sort of broadly is to bring down housing costs, because there isn't enough housing for students here in Provo. And I think that, you know, if given the opportunity to bring on an extra employee, you know, I'd use the extra labor to help accelerate or encourage development, particularly for student-oriented housing in kind of the student neighborhoods right around BYU's campus. So.
Yeah, Rachel is the one incumbent we have here, and if she doesn't know, I'm like, man.
I want so many more employees.
I want to answer this in this, like, I want to kind of maybe reframe this a little bit as well. As was discussed earlier, it can be kind of hard to get a lot of value out of a part-time employee, but if we're thinking of this in the question of, like, if you had a part-time employee's worth of extra capacity in the city, what would the highest value way to put that to use would be? I like Sam's answer. I think there's, as I've heard from residents and gotten to know the process of how the city runs, one of the bottlenecks we hear a lot, I've heard a lot about, is in the permitting and planning process, especially for people who are not, who want to build something, who want to add housing, create some unit of housing, who are not just a big, you know, national developer with a team of attorneys and financiers, but somebody on the local level who wants to, you know, create some small unit of housing at the neighborhood scale. I'll take a second just as I think infill development is going to be so crucial to the future of Provo. A lot of times we feel there's tensions when a big developer comes in, things change rapidly and drastically in the neighborhood. Oftentimes they're not part of the neighborhood, they don't understand the neighborhood's needs. There's need for that kind of development in parts of Provo, but we also, I think, could and really should empower small-scale local developers who want to play a part in building the future of their little neighborhood, their part of the city. And that right now, that's very difficult to do. The process is hard, it's expensive, it takes time. You have to be kind of an expert just to even get started. I'd love to see us figure out ways to make that process easier for people who are on the small scale mom and pop level to do that kind of work, and open the door to that to make it easier so it's not just these big developers who know the process who are able to build and shape growth in the city.
So,
Oh, did I give you an idea?
yeah, so what you're saying is you want like a coach or an advocate to help somebody go through the development and permitting
Yeah, I think
process.
that'd be great.
I love that idea.
Sure. Is that your answer too?
No, because I also want, more victims advocates and stuff like that, but, that's a great idea, thanks.
Yeah, so I have worked part-time. I was a part-time librarian. I was amazing.
I'm sure you are.
I think we can get a lot of value out of part-time. One of the things that I am planning on that's on my website and everything is that I was going to use existing resources to create a housing office at the city, because I also think that we have so many issues with housing, and it's not just with developers and streamlining that process of builders or things like that, but we have a lot of seniors who have not been able to navigate or figure out how to access the property tax relief through the county, or just figure out different things that have to do with housing. That maybe students and renters and landlords. We have so many, such a high percentage of rentals in the city, and there are a lot of issues there with education that we could really be helpful to those residents in the city. We're not allowed to mediate, we wouldn't do that, but it can put them in the right direction if there needed to be mediation, or if landlords wanted to know their rights or renters wanted to know their rights. I talked to many who don't know about where they can find out what those rights are. I know we only have like 20 seconds, sorry, but just there's a lot of housing issues in the city that I think a housing office could address, and so that's what I would do.
Can we please get a round of applause, for the candidates who took the time to come out here tonight. Every candidate running for election was invited to this forum and reminded. Some sent regrets and had other events going on this evening, but please, a warm, hearty round of applause for those who came.